actually ran an organization that's called a microfinance and microenterprise organization for 11 years. So I helped low-income women start their own businesses and gave them micro loans. I wanted to change laws. I wanted to change the opportunities for women at the very top, because I saw that if you didn't work on the on the policies and the plans and who's leading in different companies, you'll never change. And you're always just going to be sort of, putting a Band-Aid on problems. So I think one of the things that we're seeing is this is the first generation of women at an age where you have power and money and you can really change stuff, and there's a lot of us. And so we can activate us.
Thanks a lot, Julie, for joining in today with us. Very excited to be speaking with you on the issue of, gender diversity and lesser women representation, especially in the world of investing. More so excited because you have founded multiple organizations and are a part of so many committees which foster gender diversity. And the best part about it is that you have managed to fund so many female founded startups that more and more are joining your committee and are wanting to be funded by you. So tell me that how did this inspiration to start something for women come in the first place, because your organizations are also named in a way that how women lead and how women invest. So clearly there's so much of focus on women. Tell us some backstory behind launching this.
You got it. Well, I actually ran an organization that's called a microfinance and microenterprise organization for 11 years. So I helped low-income women start their own businesses and gave them micro loans. So I did that for a really long time. And 11 years is a long time to be the CEO of anything. 11 years is a really long time to run anything. And I was super tired. I was like, okay, I'm retiring. I'm not going to run anything again. And then it kind of was it's very hard to do social services where you're working directly with people. You have to raise money and do the work, right? And so there came a moment for me when I was, getting together with a bunch of women who are in my age and my level, like women who are running a lot of things. And I brought people together for a lunch on the neuroscience of teams. Okay. And what was really fascinating to me was in that moment, I started realizing that people had very different needs at this sort of life stage between 45 and 65, and a huge amount of power and potential to have impact on systems. And I know that's sort of a long way to say, like, I wanted to change laws. I wanted to change the opportunities for women at the very top, so that all the other kinds of work that I'd done my whole life, which was working directly with low-income women, because I saw that if you didn't work on on the policies and the plans and who's leading in different companies, you'll never change. And you're always just going to be sort of, putting a Band-Aid on problems. And so that's really where this organization came about. And, we have this moment in time in the world, especially in the United States, we have more women with power and money and influence at top executive levels than we ever had before. 30 years ago, my mom's generation, there were a couple women who had broken the glass ceiling in different ways, but it wasn't very many, and they had to act like men. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing is this is the first generation of women that are at an age where you have power and money and you can really change stuff, and there's a lot of us. And so we can activate us. Like, only 2% of a venture capital dollars go to companies founded by women. Well, there's a lot of structural reasons that's the case and problems. But what we do know is that the investors, the people who are the individuals investing in those funds, have significant influence, and women aren't investing in that kind of in venture in the same as much as they could. They're more likely to be investing in the stock market, which is a little, it's a little more open and accessible, right? But what we want is for women women start to understand, how do you get into these rooms of power and influence, and how do you actually ask the right questions and push people to change their behavior?
Got it. You also mentioned while you were speaking that there used to be a time when women would act like men to fit in a room, but that's not the case now because they have their own circle of power and influence. So, what do you think has changed from then to now?
Well, I think it's the volume of us. In the 1980s, I'll never forget, we were all wearing these business jackets. You would never come to a meeting like you and I are today in pretty dresses, right? You would only go in a business jacket with shoulder pads, like the extra padding to make it look like big boxy shoulders. And then we would literally wear ties. They're little pencil ties. It was the stupidest thing. And I just remember in the early 90s, there was all this conversation like, we have to be able to be feminine, but still be taken seriously. How do you wear feminine work clothes? Like it literally, they didn't even know that women, I mean, it was like this whole big conversation. It was so dumb. It's like, and now it's not even, you guys don't even think about it. Now you guys are like, can I wear jeans and t-shirts on Fridays? I mean, it's, but that's just a good example. In 1988 in the United States, we passed a law saying women could finally take out a loan for a business without getting their husband's signature. 1988. Is that crazy? Like that was like yesterday. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a few days back, I was speaking to one of my other speakers, and they were saying that personal finance is such a big thing, which women still don't have their hands on, and they suffer very badly when they have to deal with it. And I think most of the confidence and independence comes from there when you're able to manage your finances by yourself and not really rely on somebody else. And in an article itself, now that you have pointed out, I was reading that women founder says that I would never ask my daughter that she should be going to her father and asking him that how can I deal with my finance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I just think there's some weird cultural things that have made it a lot of taboos. And honestly, the world's not set up for women in business anyway. All the roles for leadership are really based on structure, on what the way men work and structures that men have set up. And a lot of them need to evolve for everybody's sake. It's not necessarily been good for men. Men and women have both been hurt by cultural narratives. And not everybody's one way, right? So we need a new way of leading in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, and also like you rightly mentioned about the statistics that only 2% of the funding has been going to women founders. So is it because we don't have many women investors who could invest into women-led startups, or is it because the men just don't want women to come into the circle of funding?
It's kind of an interesting question. I think it's both. And the thing is, I don't think most men, some men do, because I don't know, there's yucky people everywhere. But
Yeah.
most men, they're just not thinking about that much. They're really busy and they don't want to change how things have been done. And they're trying to go, trying to get as quickly to the end as they can. And this is the thing. We trust people who are like us because we know people who went to similar schools, even people who are our age, who are ethnicity, who are, our sexual orientation, all that stuff. You trust people who are similar to you, and you want them around you. And so if you think about making investments in companies started by founders, you make investments in companies founded by people that you trust, who you feel like you understand, and that you can have, frankly, you can have shortcuts of conversation, right? And so the thing is, women will return, it depends on the report you look at, somewhere between 26 and 35% to their investors, more to their investors. And so this is the thing. It's unconscious bias, and it's hurting the financial returns of the venture capitalists in the world, because they're not seeing opportunities, because they're blind to them, because they're biased, and they're losing out on financial returns. Morgan Stanley did a report and said we're leaving $4.4 trillion on the table of earnings by not investing in companies founded by women.
Yeah, and a very interesting catch here, which I also read about. Why is it that women-led businesses generate more revenues and sometimes even profits for that matter? They're not the businesses which will burn a lot of cash. They will be the ones that will grow slowly but steadily
Yeah.
and have a sustainable path going forward. Why is it only with women-led business?
Well, women and men they're all on a spectrum. So, but we're going to make generalizations here. Okay. Like that was a generalization you just made, and it's true, but there are a couple parts of that story. One, in general, women are more conservative in their in their in their how big they talk about something getting. They're more realistic, and they're more capital efficient. They're more performance driven. They make a lot of good decisions based on a lot of good business skills. Now, men are rewarded for talking big and being bombastic and saying, I'm going to make $1 billion tomorrow. And women can't get away with that. No one ever believes them. They believe men for their potential culturally, and they believe women for what they've already accomplished. So there's a very big difference between, sort of what society allows for men and women in their behavior. So it is not, we just did a research study on the investing behavior of women and men. And one of the things we found is men are more likely, I think most people know this, more likely to, like, on the stock market, to buy individual stocks and trade frequently. It's fun, gives you an adrenaline rush to do it. Women are more likely to invest in a mutual fund. They make more money over time. Men lose money because they're paying the big fees to do stock trading, and stock trading is not something you can do as an individual these days. It's all based on computer algorithms. It's very hard to do that for anyone, even the most experienced people. And so that's just a good example of, the different behaviors of men and women. So I think for women founders as well, they're going to be more, they're going to manage risk in a different way. And today, the women-run companies that have venture funding are the most effective. They're the most successful. So you're getting the cream of the crop. You're getting the top 1%, the top 2%, because you're not investing in all the other ones.
Yeah, that's right. And also in one of your articles, you mentioned that women are the future of VC funding. Why do you say that? Is it because of the fact that 60 to 70% of the decision making falls on women's hands, be it for any product or services?
Well, this is what I think it is. Women are, like I said, we've had women now, a whole new day of more women with power, wealth, and influence. We have money. A lot of us have a lot of money for the first time ever. The money that we can invest. And one of the things we also found in our research is that women want to invest aligned with their values. And in venture, you can actually make your investments have an influence on your own power in the market. And so, I think for us, it's just really important to be looking at, how do we make it more accessible and easier for women to understand how to get into venture? How do we make the sort of first step or the minimum investment amount lower so we can get way more women investing in venture? Because we have the money. Now we just need the invitation. That's all. We just need an invitation to cross in, we need the door to be open for us.
Yeah, correct. And with your organization, you're opening many doors and giving many invitations to women. So tell us how you're doing that.
Well, I have a couple different organizations that are related, right? How Women Lead is a nonprofit organization that is designed to help women in all areas of their lives. Think about, how do you up game, right? As a philanthropist, as an executive, or getting on corporate boards. So people come to us for all those reasons. Well, investment in venture, investment in women founders is one of the biggest broken rungs in the ladder that's affecting all of us. So it's a huge opportunity for the 16,000 women in our network to know about investing in venture for the first time, So it's a big opportunity for people. And so this is a moment in time for us where we have the women who understand and are now ready to act. And so we have a venture fund. It is only $25,000 spread over 4 years as a minimum investment. So just like $6,250 is the minimum investment amount. And you can use your retirement funds for this. You can use a donor advised fund. There's a lot of different options that people don't really know that. And so that's what we're trying to do, is sort of, take all these women who are wanting to, let's say you want to go on a corporate board. Well, if you tell people that you're also a venture investor, they're going to think of you differently when they invite you onto that. And when they think about you as a board member, because that means you have a different view into the investing cycles and leadership, and that you're, bold, player in the game. So
yeah, that's right. But building a community is also so difficult in today's time. So as an entrepreneur, how did you do that brick by brick? How did you get those first set of 100 or 10 women into your community, which have now grown into 10,000 plus?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's, as I've mentioned, this moment in time. So 10 years ago, we didn't know that much about how women, top executive women, it was honestly an explosion of time where women were really starting to step into bigger leadership opportunities and roles. And I think for all of us, we were all surprised at the needs that we had and how no one was addressing those needs. So I think I was accidentally at the right time, at the right place at the right time, to be honest. And I know how to grow things. And I personally I'm a connector. When people are involved with me and stuff, it's a win-win. Everybody gets something. And so because of that, I would sort of create an environment and say, well, okay, why don't we all invite 5 friends? And then, okay, so then all those women invite 5 friends. And so if everybody invites 5 friends, the whole world will be connected at some point. So that's how it sort of created. I think the moment in time was there where people were ready and hungry. And I already had a great network, and I knew how to, so for example, and you can imagine this for yourself in whatever your own world is, right?
Yeah.
But for top executive women, they're always the only woman in the room, unless, like with a bunch of men, right? Unless they're in a room with other women, and usually they're the only senior woman in the room. So everybody wants something from them. So it's work. I mean, it's lovely to give back and mentor younger women, but if you never get anybody else who gives anything to you, like you're always if you're the only woman in the room, that's hard. And if you're the most senior person and everybody wants something from you, that's hard too. Yeah. And so what we found is if we bring women who are all top executives together, it's such a relief to them. And so we're really careful like I have a daughter who's 30 and she's amazing and she's a corporate leader and manages a big team, but I don't invite her to stuff. She's not our target market, and she'll want the great women in my network to give her advice, which they're happy to do, but that's not why they come to How Women Lead. Does that make sense? So you can think about it for yourself. Like if you were all like a group of all volleyball players, and then you brought somebody else into the group that's not a volleyball player, it's fine. It might be fun, but she's not going to be able to talk about volleyball. I don't know. It's like, I mean, any group you can think about, think about, all of a sudden the conversation changes from talking about volleyball to talk about sports in general or something, right?
Yeah. That's true. But on this part of connecting with people, I can clearly see that you have a mastermind in it, and your LinkedIn also says that like you have unique ability to connect with people that can help you make a change. So what really is your secret sauce? Because rarely people can do this. It's an art.
Okay, Radhika. Well, this is how this works. Every single conversation I have with people, I say, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And I'm literally looking at them and listening for, oh, I could introduce you to so-and-so because you're looking for this and I know they're looking for that. So I listen really carefully and I connect, and I know everybody wins when you make connections. A lot of people are really careful not to use open their doors to different people. And they think that, I don't know, they really hold their contacts close to their vest. And I'm the opposite. I think everybody wins when we're connected. So I think that's really a big part of it. But I just think if you need to think about what can you bring to the other person. Okay, so there's this interesting thing in fundraising, right? If you're ever in sales, they say if you ask for money, they give you advice. If I go to you and I ask you for advice, I'll get money. So if I go to you first and I say, hey, can you help me with this company that I'm starting? I'd love your advice on what I should do about this or that, or how big I should grow. And if the person's having enough fun and they start to see how I work and they think that I'm smart in my way of approaching things, all of a sudden they're going to be helping me in a whole different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right. But you also mentioned that you've built these connections over years. And of course, it takes time to be able to say that, okay, while you're having a conversation in any background of life, you can say with proud that, okay, I know this person and I'll connect it with you. So what was your journey before you started these organizations? How did you build such a huge database for yourself?
Well, okay, first and foremost, one thing that's kind of interesting, there's science about how you build a real friendship or a real relationship with people. And they say you have to spend I can't remember the number, but let's just say it's like 36 hours with somebody. Now think about that. It's COVID and you aren't seeing people that often. It could take years. It could take 20 years to build a close relationship with someone. After 20 years and 36 hours of meeting each other, a couple times a year, finally you have a strong, solid, deep friendship.
Yeah.
Well, you can do things like I take people on trips, international trips that we go for a whole week. And let me tell you, that's where you really build strong, deep relationships with people, right? Is having that kind of concentrated time. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I just think, listen, I haven't always been great at this, but like I fall in love with people. And so that's, not everybody is that way. And so I think you have to naturally lean in and want to be around other people. But I have made it a point to keep up with people and really, and honestly, my mission is for them to be successful. That is the mission of How Women Lead, is for women to lead. So that my whole goal is to help them be successful. And I think they feel that. And we have a credo that we've laid out in our organization of how we ask people to be together. And I think it's a really important way of being that, that ensures that everybody feels safe in this environment. So our culture, as I said multiple times, is not good for women. And in the United States in particular, there's some issues that we're inviting people to have a countercultural, like the opposite of what the culture tells us, like to actively be the opposite. And everybody has to do like a Girl Scouts pledge. So we ask them to be fierce advocates for each other. That's actually sounds obvious. It's the opposite of what our culture says to do. Women compete. Women tear each other down. In our culture, often, and it's not everybody, but this is a cultural norm. The cultural norm is the mean girl behavior that there's movies about it. We know it's a cultural norm because there's movies about it, right? And so we say, be the opposite. Don't be the mean girl. The second is to make introductions and to say yes. A lot of women culturally believe that it is indelicate to ask people to help them, that we never want to ask for help. And so we keep our connections really close to our chest because we feel like if we ask for that, it's too much if we're asking someone to do something. And so we're asking people to be the opposite. The third is to reinforce her voice when she speaks up and isn't heard. In the United States in particular, women's voices are not heard. They literally are ignored. You are in a meeting and you say something and it's like, wait, nobody responded. People didn't even hear what I said. 10 minutes later, a man says the same thing and he's brilliant, right? Everyone's like, oh, great idea, Jeff. And it's like, wait, I just said that. You feel like you're crazy. You're like, wait, is there something wrong with me? And it's actually a cultural problem. So we ask people to reinforce their voice, everyone's voice when they're not being heard. And finally, a lot of us culturally think we're told to be quiet and not take up too much space. We're we're told to not take credit, and we don't need to be leading. And I think what's so important for us is to say, be unabashedly visible, take
Yeah.
up space, have you get to have an opinion, and we
Mm.
want to put you on stage. So so by inviting people into those norms,
Yeah.
it's magic, because I think a lot of us are hurt from people's behavior in the past, and it just creates a safe environment for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, with that narrative, only when biases can be addressed, only when stories are shared, and more and more people become vocal about it, especially women. But how do you really convince CEOs to take such consulting from you, given that they have a stern mindset that it's okay for women to not speak up and not be the front face?
Oh, I don't know, Radhika. I think people, honestly, some people meet me and meet our organization, and it's not right for them, and that's okay. This organization, to me, is designed in a certain way, and if this fits if this is what you're needing in your life, great. If some people still want to hold on to those old beliefs or the old ways of being, and they're not ready, that's fine. Or if they find another community that more closely fits the way they like to work, that's fine too. But this is a really open-hearted, generous, we all win together kind of behavior. So
Understood. And since when did you start consulting organizations and managers? And like, who was your first client whom you got on board? And if you could share the story of how did you get them?
Well, I don't have clients in what I do. This is a different thing. I have a nonprofit network, and then I have a for-profit venture fund.
Mm.
But if you're asking about my first CEO role, when I was 25 years old, I was hired to work in an organization, and it was a music conservatory for low-income children.
Mm.
And the person who was newly made the executive director was a violist. She knew how to play the instrument really beautifully, but she wasn't an experienced manager. Well, I wasn't either, but I knew more about finance and some things like that than she did. And so what happened is, because she needed a partner, I stepped into those shoes and learned on the job. And, I knew a little more than she did. So at least it looked like I knew something, right? But I look back now and I'm like, I knew nothing. But I worked really hard, and I loved the mission. And so I became the COO, which is the number 2 person, basically the chief operating officer. And after that, while I was there for 7 years, and then I was recruited for a CEO role. And so I became a CEO, I think, when I was 31 or 32, and then kind of have been running stuff ever since.
Yeah, but you also do conduct searches for women on corporate boards, right? And of course,
Sure.
I know that you leverage your network to do that. But how difficult was it for you to do it initially when you had a growing network, but not very huge enough, but you still had to fulfill the purpose of having women on boards?
It didn't work that way. What happened is we just, so some things, they look like they were planned and they're not. I don't know. If you ever grow your own thing, you are right now, you'll notice it's like, this was not what we planned, but I'm glad it happened this way, right? So in the beginning, I was getting women together because people were hungry to be together. I brought people together someone wrote a book on the neuroscience of teams. And I was like, oh, she was like, I'd love to meet some corporate women. I was like, I have all these women I really want to make sure I don't lose track of, that have been my friends and worked on other stuff with me. Let me invite them to a lunch. And everybody was so hungry to be together, and the buzz was crazy of people who were in the room. And so, I just kind of said, well, and then someone wrote during that event was like, you have the best network. I'm creating a LinkedIn group. That LinkedIn group then became the group that people started to say in that group, like, can you do this? And, oh, can we hear someone talk about getting on corporate boards? Because I was like, oh, well, what do you guys want to talk about? So I would just talk about, And then I was like, oh, well, why don't we actually create a class, like a pathway class, right? So we created a class, and then people started to say, hey, my company is looking for somebody for a board, can you help me find someone? And so that's kind of how it happened. It was like, someone said, oh, I need this, and I have this. And like, I was like, oh, I can be the matchmaker because I know all the women, and some of the women are in positions where they have board opportunities. So all of a sudden, the matchmaking was happening.
Yeah, I mean, every successful founder, when they look back on their story, they would be like, we never had this vision of achieving the end goal which we have right now. And it's always the baby steps that we take to, get where we are. And like you said, most of the things happen by accident and serendipity than planned ones. And that's the beauty of growing up, I feel.
Well, and I think, Radhika, what's so important is, I talk about our organization being a learning organization. You have to just kind of know, like, not hold too tightly to your vision. Like, I'm a true believer in my mission, but I'm always looking at what are other ways to accomplish this? Is there another, because once you get in, you start to realize. So for example, we were like, oh, we want more women founders to get funded. I've got women who have some money. Let's create the venture fund, a structure to get those women connected with these founders, and let's get them funded. But then once I got in, I was like, running a venture fund is problematic for women. There are all kinds of broken structures. So then I was like, I'm going to go fix that too. So I'm working on legislation to address the structural problems for women-run venture firms. I'm getting 175 women venture capitalists together on a regular basis to be able to support each other. Like, we're working in a whole bunch of different ways.
But I was saying that you got a group of women investors from your network, and you found out that there was a need for a women VC fund to be launched to support the women-led startups, and that's how you went about it. But did you have an experience earlier in your background of running a fund? I mean, is it really required to have that experience to launch a fund of your own?
Well, I think there's a lot of different skill sets you need to run a venture fund. And so usually what people have in all leadership is, you're like, out of the 10 things, I can do these 6 really well, and I'll hire somebody else to help me with those 4 or whatever, right? You bring in a partner. And so I had run a microfinance and microenterprise organization, which is basically a bank doing micro loans. I ran that for 11 years. And so I have a long history of experience working with startup women founders, evaluating and financing their companies, but at a smaller scale. I also have experience running stuff, and I have experience fundraising and marketing. And so all I didn't have was like the venture capital structure stuff, and that you can hire for. And there's a lot of service providers and people. So like, nobody has everything you need for any role. Everybody's got to complement what they're best at. And even if I know how to do some stuff, there's some stuff I don't like to do. So I'm always going to hire somebody to do that other stuff.
Oh yeah, that's so true. And that's how you build your team. But when it comes to advice to other organizations also on hiring women, what are some of your leadership styles that you adapt to when it comes to building your own team and in your nonprofit organization for women?
Well, I would say one of the most important things is this cultural alignment that I mentioned earlier. These, sort of my credo of the 4 things, whatever that is for you, everybody who's involved with us feels like they're a part of the club because they know the credo. Like, I think just like having some kind of values-based frame that you really reinforce and that makes people, focus on how they want to be together. I think that's one of the magic elements. Now, I would say there's a lot of other stuff that's like good management and good leadership. What is your inspiring North Star? How do you make everybody feel special and important and needed? I think the worst thing, and we've all been in those organizations where you're like, they don't need me here. Nobody even notices if I'm here, and I think like I'm a student of human behavior. And what motivates people. And, there's even a study called behavioral economics, which is like, how do people make choices about where they spend their money, but also their time. And so I just think it's, good leaders. I don't know. I think I'm a decent leader. I don't, somebody else would have to tell you if I'm a good leader, but, I think good leaders really care about the people around them, and those people having a great experience and being able to fully be in themselves now, and fully, express their what they're best at. So like I said, with me, like I try and hire for the stuff I'm not best at. Like Radhika, if I hired you to work for me, I would say, hey Radhika, your job is these 10 things. What are you, where do you get lost and forget time and get so excited and focused? And what is it that you can do? And what is it's really hard for you? And like, ow, I don't ever want to do this thing. Like there's certain things it's like, I can do, like, certain things, but I don't really want to do them, especially anymore. I'm too old for that. So like, I always say that to my staff. It's like, what are the things in this job that you love the most? And right now, for example, I had an executive assistant. She had a baby. So they had somebody come in and take over her role for 2 months. And we thought she was great. And we're like, oh, we're going to keep her too. So we're going to have 2 of them. Right? So I just had a meeting with them yesterday, and I was like, all right, ladies, here are the 100 things we need to get done. Both of you tell me, what do you love the most? What's the most fun and gets you jazzed? What is, and I had those 3 things, right? The things that you can do, but it's not your favorite. And then the things that you hate doing. And what was so great, and this is like the example of human behavior, it's like both of them, one loved what the other one hated. Like, and it's like, great.
Yeah.
In 2 people, I can cover everything that needs to be done and everybody's happy. So if everybody's happy and doing what makes them happy and like where they get lost and they're really in their jam and they love the mission and they feel like there's cultural alignment, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. But what happens in case when both of them love something and hate something at the same time? How do you allocate work in that case?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do stuff I don't. I mean, we all have doing some stuff we don't like, but honestly, like if it was 90% of your job and I know you don't like it, we should get somebody else for the job. I hate firing people or letting people go, but the truth is, like, so my very first employee that worked for me in, one of my jobs, right? I inherited her. I didn't hire her. She was terrible at her job. She was very sweet, but she was terrible at her job. And after a while, I was like, honey, this is not working like for either one of us. I don't think you should keep working here. And I felt so terrible because the first time you fire somebody, you stay up all night long for 5 days in a row. It's horrible. You just fret and about how am I going to say it? What am I going to do? And like, how do other people feel? And blah, blah, blah. Okay. 2 years later, I'm in a restaurant with my family and I see her at the restaurant. I was like, oh no. And she came up to me and she's like, Julie, I want to thank you. The best gift anyone ever gave to me is when you fired me from that job. I never should have been doing a job like that. Now I'm a massage therapist. I make more money. I have flexibility and I love my life. I'm like, you would be a perfect massage therapist. She's so sweet. She's so kind, but she didn't have good systems and discipline. That's what the whole job was, right? And so it was like, wow, that's perfect for you. So I do kind of believe that, generally, if it's not working out for you in your job, or if your employer's not happy with whoever's, usually nobody's happy. And it's a little bit better to, it's horrible for people to lose their job in the moment, but in the long run, if there are other jobs available, like everybody's culture is different, but in that situation, it was very painful for both of us to work together, not because we didn't like each other, but because she couldn't do the job I needed her to do. So that meant I was constantly bugging her about stuff like, why didn't this get done? And have you done this yet? I hate micromanaging people. That is horrible. It's like, I'd rather do it myself than have to bug stuff. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to do that straight talk and not mince words. I mean, being crystal clear always helps, because when you try to, beat around the bush, it doesn't do any good for both the parties and you just end up losing your time.
I think so. As long as you start from a place of being loving and kind. Like if you feel it in the moment because you're so worried about your own performance. But if I come like, Radhika, I really care about you and your own professional success, and you're not going to be successful in this job. And it's frustrating for me. So let's figure out either a job that you'll be successful at here, Or I think I want to give you enough of a runway so you can go find the next thing that's right for you. Like if you start with kindness and love, I just think it's when people, even like an employer, gets so, sometimes we get, we can get so caught up in our own stuff. Like the fact that I was hiding from this woman in a restaurant, like that's terrible. But like, but it's because I didn't know enough. I wasn't mature enough to understand. I was, very young. And I think it's just important for us, I just think if you can be centered and meditate a little and, start from a place of love and care for other people.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way how you described that even if you want to fire a person, how it needs to be said and communicated, because your words really determine your mindset in that one particular timing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of leaders fail because their team doesn't support them, and it's also because they're just very rude and harsh. So I think, how do you get to a point where you become so emotionally mature and are able to communicate things in a very light way? Because you like you said, you were hiding from the girl at the restaurant earlier, and you have learned it over the time how to deal with situations. So what really happens in those years when you grow up? What changes?
Well, I mean, experience, if you've been through it a couple times, but I hope anyone who's listening to this that's in that situation as an employee or as a manager, just, I think for all of us, if you just like, even as an employee, I know this is ridiculous because you don't have power. Power is, having power over somebody is a really important, it's hard for, it's a complicated dynamic, let's just say. But even as an employee, if you're not doing a great job, why? And sometimes we just want to blame. And other times it's like, can you just really reflect on why this isn't working out for you? Because it's not going to be working out for your employer if it's not working out for you, right? We can only fake it so long. I don't know. It's pretty obvious. I've had people who worked for me that weren't happy, and you just kind of see their attitude, and it's like, you don't want to be. Don't be here if you don't want to be here. Like, I know you need a job, but don't stay here because you're making everybody else feel uncomfortable. So I don't know. I run small teams, like 10 to 20 people. Usually I've run bigger teams, but I like a smaller team. And I just like it when everybody's loves the mission and is in their zone. Like everybody's growing. Once you stop growing and learning, like nobody's perfect at their job, including me. Once you stop growing and learning, then, it's, then
a joyride.
either, right? Like, so there, you should always have a little discomfort because you're growing. And how do you handle discomfort? Do you get mad at other people because of your discomfort, or do you actually try and understand it and all that good stuff? So.
Understood. And lastly, I just have a rapid fire round for you where I'll ask you some questions that are quite, inspiring for other audience to hear, because they can learn from your mistakes. So starting with that, which were some of the mistakes you made early on, which you now regret or think that it could have been done in a different way?
I regret or have made, I don't really regret anything because everything's a learning opportunity, but my mistakes were hiding instead of communicating. If I didn't have the skills or understand how to communicate about something, I would hide. And I think, we all have our family of origin stuff. I think probably from my family experience, it was hard to learn how to communicate about stuff and really address things head on.
Yeah. So was it only experience that helped you get better at communication? Or was there some books also that helped you?
Yeah, I'm sure I read books and talked to people and stuff, but I can't tell you what they would have been. It's been a long time.
Got it. But on books, I did see that you have a library of sort earlier in the video. What are some of the books that you would like to recommend to our audience if they have to communicate the way you are right now in the interview?
Well, I mean, I know this is going to sound a little cheesy, but Brene Brown right now has great books on vulnerability. So I would say any authors that are sort of in that space, because it's really about your own self-regulation and you, right? So I would say start with that. And then I also love this, there's some business books that, you don't have to believe everything that they say, but they're good they're good starting point for conversation. And I actually love having my team all read the same book, because then we can together have language, shared language about something. So there's a book called Good to Great. And if everybody reads it, you're like, oh, we need to get our flywheel going, like whatever, like there are things in that, like, so you can learn from those books, but you also have shared language.
Which was the most difficult decision you made in your life, and what does success mean to you now, and what did it mean to you earlier when you just started your career?
I don't know what was the most difficult decision. I would say one of the most important decisions anyone can make is who their life partner is, women in particular. So I've been with my husband for 33 years. He is the sweetest, most wonderful, peaceful person. He is my champion, and every day he tells me I'm enough. And he makes it possible for me to do everything I do. He makes me feel safe. I always have a home base. And so I can take risks because of him. So find a great life partner, be wise. It's not about how much money they make or how tall they are, how beautiful they are. It's about how are they going to make you feel about yourself throughout your whole life.
Got it. And the last part of the question, what is success for you? How do you define it for yourself? Has it changed over the course of your life?
Success for me is my impact on other people.
Has it been always the same?
I think so, yeah. I'm a social worker by orientation.
Yes.
So.
Got it. Cool. Lovely speaking with you, Julie. Thanks a lot for your time, and love your smile and the energy that you bring forth to any conversation. I'm sure that a lot of our audience members are going to be loving to watch this interview. And I will make sure that I meet up with you if I'm in or around USA, and wanting to really invite you to India for something that we can do together.
Sounds good, Radhika. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much. Bye.